Hi. Today we're going to go over the 5 tips that will give you professional results when using the miter box. Whether you're a DIY enthusiast or you're just getting started in your woodworking journey, these subtle tips will give you the best experience possible, especially number 4. Let's get started. The first tip is properly securing the box to the workbench. Well, there are a few ways that you can do this. You can simply clamp the miter box to the work surface. This is probably fine for most, but if you want the least chance of movement, you'll need to fold down the tabs underneath and then clamp. This is mostly ideal when you're working with material that will sit between the leading edge and the clamp. However, if you're trying to cut material that is larger than this is simply not an option. You will have to then remove the clamps, drill some holes in your bench, and secure it with screws. Be careful when you're doing this, however, because as you screw it down, you could potentially crack your miter box. For tip number 2, it would be impossible to do a precision cut if your material moves the second you start cutting. Secure the material that you're cutting with the supplied cam pins or a clamp, and be sure whenever you place the clamps or pins, it will not interfere with your sawing stroke. Tip 3 is letting the saw do all the work. All you have to do is move it back and forth. Let the weight of the saw move it down as the teeth clear the material that you're cutting. So you're going to want to stand off to the side of the saw. So when I'm grabbing the saw, my wrist is in line with my elbow and my shoulder, so that I'm just moving back and forth like a pendulum. I don't want to flare or tuck my elbow, and I don't want to rock my wrist. Get a good stance, leaning forward, knees bent. All right, tip number 4 is to measure twice. Clearly mark your cut. So say I want to get 2 inches off. Make sure all the slack's out, and I mark 2 inches. When I mark my 2 inches, I'm marking just to the side of the 2-inch mark. So I mark the spot that I want to cut off. This is the part that I'm going to keep. And I know that if I make that mark disappear with the saw, that this will be 2 inches. Now, it doesn't matter if you make your mark on this side of the line or if you mark directly in center. What does matter is knowing how you measure and doing that consistently. If you're making something like a picture frame and you cut on this side of the line on one side, this side of the line on the other, directly on the line for one, maybe go back to this side for the last one, your miters are not going to look right because your individual pieces are actually different lengths. So it's extremely important that you figure out what you like to do best and do that consistently. The last tip is to maintain your equipment. Keep your saw dry and rust free. You can place some finishing wax on the blade to help give it a little bit of protection against surface rust. It'll actually help the saw glide through the plastic better, as well as while cutting. Also, make sure that you vacuum out all the cracks and crevices in the miter saw itself, so that when you go to use it next time, it's ready to go and you don't have a buildup of sawdust that gets compacted and then now your cut turns angled or whatnot. And if you damage these cams, they just won't work properly anymore, and you'll have a hard time holding your material. When not in use, I strongly recommend storing the miter box in a drawer or on a shelf. I know that I would probably knock this right off this workbench the next time I go to use this if it was sitting here. Same thing with the saw. If this thing tumbles, more than likely you're going to break or bend a tooth, and then the saw is basically useless at that point. All right, now you're ready to try your own project. If you need a little bit more inspiration, check out this video over here, where I'll show you a project that I did solely using this miter saw and box.